will now proceed to take some time to answer all your questions. Please be sure to type your questions into the question box that is located in the control panel. Okay, so please do so right now. So without further ado, let's just start off with our very first question. Okay, so we do have the first one coming from Mr. Yo. He is from Singapore. His question is, what would you do to assess when you are presented with a child with ASD?
Yes, so when present with ASD, as I said, we look at different components to it. You know, what is causing on the ASD? Is it, how severe is he on the range? Whether it's mild, severe, where is he at? That's the first step. And then we look at the underlying cause, look at the gut health, start with an organic acid test. Sometimes I even do heavy metal screening. There are different kinds of functional tests that we have to send out to the US, usually in other countries, that can give us clues on where to start at. So detox is heavy with children with ASD, so that's why we need to know where they are at, do all the testing first, and then begin the treatment. And the treatments are usually, I do herbs, nutritional support, homeopathy, diet. It's based on those lines. So I cannot obviously give specifics about what to, because I don't know about what's going on with your child. So it's as I said, you have to do the testing first, and then we will go forward from there.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Radhika. So we'll move on to the second question. This is coming from Marife M. Seralde. Okay, she would like to know, how do I get my autistic child to eat healthily?
Yeah, so that is a very interesting question. It's an important one because, yeah, so now nutrient deficiencies with autism children is very common, and that's when they because that changes the taste buds. Okay, because the such as zinc deficiency can change the taste buds, and they crave for only certain foods. So in this situation, yes, we have to make sure first that the nutrient deficiencies are there, and we improve those taste buds with bitters. Appetite is very important. And first step is to break the cycle. If they're eating a processed foods, we have to break the cycle, because that's going to take a lot of more effort from the parent, because there's a lot of resistance and all of that. Sometimes I often tend to work with a nutritionist who can actually plan a good palatable diet that the child can have. They might also have issues with breaking down or swallowing because of the muscle tone being on the side, sensory issues. So they eventually start to improve. At least we have to start at some point. Okay, they eventually start to see the difference, but it's just the starting point that it might take a little bit of time. So I highly recommend that you work with someone, a naturopathic doctor or a functional practitioner to start with, and they can provide you much more guidance on that for your child.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Radhika. We shall move on to the third question. Okay, this is a very interesting question. Coming from John Michael Tesla, his question is something like, how can we ensure that the nutrition intake by the child with ASD should be monitored regularly?
Okay, so yes, how can you monitor the nutrition? Yeah, so this is an interesting question. Well, few things. We are not looking at calories, or we are not looking at exact nutrient the amounts here, because that is totally impossible, especially with children. They have so much of sensory issues, they might not be able to take everything or that amounts. So all we are trying to do is to at least start with a cleaner diet and add more vegetables to the diet, more fruits, more rainbow colored vegetables and things. We often have to do regular nutrient panels and the organic acid testing, so to make sure that they are adequate enough, and the symptoms also, and how the symptoms change or with certain diets. That is actually a good start to do. You can't always try to measure things and do. That's rather difficult. If there is change with symptoms with the diets that I mentioned, like the simplest diet with greens and more wholesome diet, you'll see this. You will see the symptoms changing.
Okay. The next question is from Yap Rei. She mentioned something about it might be difficult to incorporate new dietary changes for a child with ASD. Are there any tips on doing so?
Yes, so for dietary tips, actually, yes, so there might be necessary to intervene with a nutritionist here, because you will need to do specific foods, that recipes and things like that, where the child can actually like to eat those things. But at the same time, we are not feeding the sugars. So you will need more recipes and stuff, which we actually do it here. And also I recommend our nutritionist on board to help with these children. Oftentimes for parents is really hard to do on its own. So you can start with purees, smoothies, things like that. Smoothies are also very good, where you can add in more veggies, fruits. You can mix in those nutrient combos in the smoothies, because the taste, they don't feel the taste as much, but yet they get all of these nutrients. You don't have to do huge smoothies, but you can even do a small amounts, but add in fruit, maybe vegetables in there, and to start with that. It takes a little while for the kids to be on this, but eventually they're okay with it. You have to do a lot of creative. You have to be a little more creative to get to there. Also, things like those lollipops with frozen lollipops with fruits and vegetable purees, not vegetable but rather fruits, instead of having candies and things like that.
Well, that's very interesting. Lollipops with purees, yeah? That's definitely a healthy version of a lollipop than the sweet and sugary ones.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I have the next question coming from Khalid Aziz. His question is basically about his son, who is 6 years old, and he is off mood to rice and some vegetables. But yes, he does take bread and fruit. What else will he need to do to ensure that his child eats more and improves his health?
Yeah, so if he is more inclined to eating bread and just the fruit alone, is that what you said? Can you repeat? Is that bread and fruit?
He
He
is
eats only bread and
bread
fruit.
and fruits, and he's off mood to rice and vegetables and some vegetables. Yeah.
So, so with the breads also, now there are so many ways that you can actually make those breads. Um, there are gluten-free breads available, but they might not taste very good. So there are different recipes we often give here in terms of how they can start making those breads. Um, and in terms if he's only eating that, basically, yes, his microbiome is actually wanting those things, and that's why probably first look at what dietary deficiencies are going on. We look into that, and also the bacteria or yeast treat those things. The taste buds start to change. I've seen this so often. The taste buds start to change and they start to eat better. Instead of us forcing them to eat, you have to eat this and this is not good, it's really a you can do it, but it's rather so much harder to get there. So the first thing is, if you can clear up the gut a bit better, and then give him some zinc maybe. Okay, I cannot give obviously those treatment things, but I can generally say maybe zinc, iron, stuff like that. Then the taste buds change. They want more food. They start to see that the parents are eating more food. They want to try it out.
I see. Well, thank you, Dr. Radhika. And yes, moving on to the next question. Okay, so this is coming from Jie Ying. So is diet planning really required for the child to do blood testing first before a better diet plan?
Well, diet can be, you can always start the diet first. If nothing else, the diet is the first thing. At least start with a gluten and casein free diets. That's like the first step. If you can't do anything, a nutrient dense diet as much you can. I mean, you don't have to force a child to eat, but then you can do the testing later on, and then you can add on to it as required. So diet is the first step, definitely.
Yeah, okay, got it. Yeah. Okay, so we move on to the next question. It's coming from Suvi Pitkola. Her question is very interesting. Why is yeast overgrowth and heavy metal toxicity so common in ASD? And why are they so vulnerable to this?
Yeah, so that's interesting question because we have so much more info about that now. Because the ASD children have certain genetic SNPs where the toxins tend to build up. They cannot detox it. The glutathione, there is something called glutathione pathway where the elimination of the mercury or other toxins is pretty much hampered. And I'm talking very simplistically because there's such more intricate links which I am not going into that details. So that is one. Glutathione is impaired. Also, the oxidative stress is very high. Oxidative stress is the is an imbalance in the antioxidants versus the free radicals. This huge free radical damage that constantly happens. And why it happens at age is, I think it has to do with the genetic SNPs basically. And so our goal is also to improve the genetic SNPs with the diet, with the sleep, with all of these interventions. The genetic SNPs have already expressed, then we can't do much. But all we can do is try to make sure that it is optimized at the max. The yeast, now coming back to the yeast overgrowth, why is it so high? It has to do with the enzyme deficiencies, the first part. And also we are seeing that the bacterial load, for some reason, it is low. We don't know why it is so high. To me, it looks more about the stomach acids are actually not enough. The stomach acid has to be enough to make sure that motility of the gut is good. When the motility is low, and when I'm talking about motility, it's not peristaltic. It's the intricate electrical activity that makes the bacteria to move forward in case it is stuck. The food moves out or the bacteria. It's only the motility is low, the stomach acids are not that sufficient enough, the bile, the glutathione, all of these things. So, and there is so much information coming now. We only know to some extent. We do not know the whole picture yet.
Okay, Ken. We'll jump on to the next question. It's coming from Bhuvana Ashrida. The question is about sugar. Okay, basically, she would like to know, is there any kind of sugar that would be healthy for children? Her son enjoys eating sweets, especially before his homework or lessons. Yeah, are there anything available out there?
So yeah, so sugar is interesting because, as I said, these children, they love sugar. They want sugar because the yeast bacteria, they also want sugar, and that drives them crazy. So
Okay.
what can you do about it is basically eat more proteins. Make sure that the proteins are good. For example, if you are a vegetarian, then good protein source of vegetarian with every meal, or sometimes don't give too much of gap between the meals. Make sure the protein is there so the blood sugar doesn't drop so often. That is one. And then make sure you can make snacks such as nut bars, or nut bars is very important because it will have the sugar intake they get from those dates and things like that, but yet it's not adding on to the yeast. If it's heavy growth of yeast and things like that, you'd have to get rid of those things before the sugar cravings stop.
Okay, got it. Yeah. And also touching on food, next question is from Charmaine. So Charmaine would like to know, what are some of the food available to help improve gut health? And
Oh yes,
yeah,
sure.
especially for non-verbal clients for non-verbal patients who already have fixed preference for food, like oily stuffs and sweet stuff. Yeah. Anything else that you can recommend to help improve the gut health?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So important things about that is variety of foods because they feed on your bacteria, such as foods that have colors, beets, berries, pomegranate, dragon fruit. These are all prebiotics. Prebiotics are the food for our bacteria.
Okay.
They have soluble fiber in them, and also soluble fiber such as chia seeds, flax seeds, anything, inulin, things like that. They all feed the good bacteria. So make sure that you have plenty of it in the diet. That's one way. And also fats. Fats are very important. Not the oxidized oils. When I talk about fat, I'm not talking about that. Fats such as avocados, coconut oil, almond oil, avocados, These things are quite important. Yeah, basically those. And all these green vegetables, different colored ones, they're actually feeding the gut bugs.
Ah, interesting.
Yes, the more colors you have, the more the bugs are very happy.
Ah, okay.
And the more you restrict the diet, those bacteria are also restricted. The certain population only grow based on the diets.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Radhika. So moving on to the next question. Okay, this is coming from Banaji. It's regarding teeth grinding. Banaji would like you to please elaborate further regarding, this teeth grinding symptoms.
Yeah, so teeth grinding is interesting because there are many reasons for teeth grinding. One can be as a result of jaw alignment. Sometimes that you need to work with a dentist to see if there is something with the jaw itself that, the clenching. Stress can also cause a lot of grinding, unknowingly when you're in sleep. You are stressed out, your body is stressed out, you can have that clenching thing. Or parasites or bacteria can have that clenching. Now, we don't have studies that say that grinding is related to parasites, but from our clinical experience, we have often seen that grinding could be a sign of these gut issues. When we treat the gut, when we treat those parasites, often the grinding calms down, the child is not so irritable, and he gets able to sleep better. To me, it looks, I feel that there might be certain toxins or whatever that might be released from these parasites, which might be causing them into a sympathetic mode or whatever.
Okay, thank you. And well, we do have time for just one final question. Okay, this is coming from Veronica Nancy. Basically, she would like to know how can she control a child with in terms of behavior after reducing the candies. Do help to give us some tips on how to handle the child mood swings.
With the mood swings.
Yes, after reducing the candy, the child get cranky and all. How is she able to handle the child mood
Well,
swings?
you'll have to see a behavioral therapist, or that is where the therapist will come in here to handle those behavioral issues. In fact, that is where you need more techniques. My role wouldn't be there because I wouldn't have those techniques that they are using. So that is where the behavioral therapist role will come in here to help you out with giving you tips into handling those situations.